from different places can work from home, making it easier for somebody to deal
And we may have
with
lost.
childcare arrangements, and that helps. And again, back to the legal point is that it did increase awareness. Oh, sorry.
You're
Can
good.
you hear me
You're
now?
good.
Okay.
Yes.
It did increase awareness. So we saw, we've been for years saying it's important to consider cybersecurity. It will bring a lot of cost to your company, reputational cost, and it was kind of like, no, it's not really that big of a deal. And now this year, they're like, wait a second, you know what? It is important to keep information protected. And it is important for us to have cybersecurity measures and to have administrative safeguards and hardware, software safeguards and everything, because we're now seeing it that the information is actually being transferred, to homes, to the laptop that everybody in the family uses, that kids are doing homework. And so we saw an increase of clients actually wanting to comply and being interested in, yeah, we probably should have like a WISP, but we should have some kind of incident response plan that is in writing and that we know how it works. And finally, kind of on the same line, companies also saw the importance of keeping personal sensitive information safe, like biometrics. When the whole pandemic started, companies were kind of like, okay, well, we're just going to start taking temperatures of our employees. And we have to come and say, wait a second, that there is biometric information, and that you can just ask people about their symptoms or about their health history without complying with labor regulations, with the treatment of biometrics. And how are you going to do that? How are you going to store it? Where are you going to do with it? You have to provide notice of those things. So I think it has facilitated in making that awareness and people having to sit and think about it faster than that will have been otherwise.
That's great. And so, this is a sub question, really. The next is, but specifically focusing on work from home. And Rhonda, I'd like to take this one, and Leah, please chime in too. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges, the specific cybersecurity challenges that have emerged as a result of work from home, and what you see being the trend, as particularly as we head into what is almost certainly looking like continuing to work from home for at least the first half of 2021, if not forever, right? Because of business efficiencies.
I think part of what you see are some things that are common sense, and part are some that people are having to learn for the first time, especially if they've not worked from home before. So as you see, I have a headset on. Okay, now my husband's working above me in one of the rooms above me. So, and we don't want that chatter to cross each other, right? Kind of things. People are more likely, let's talk a little bit about physical security. People are more likely to leave their laptops out with their papers out in a room in their house when they leave. And instead of taking the normal precautions that we would when we leave our office, we, shut things, we lock, we have some of those kinds of things to do. And so I'm covering some more of the more what I call non-obvious things here instead of, VPNs and things like that. But it's those kinds of things. It's if I'm working, so like here, I'm working at an intersection of two windows in the corner of the house. If this was facing out onto the street, I would have the blinds down. The world does not need to see what kind of technology I have in this room. And I don't want to advertise that technology, especially the setup I have now. I have a laptop, I have 2 screens, I have modems, I have printers. Let's not draw attention and say, please come and take this from me. If we're using bring your own devices to work and things like that, you really need to think about the same type of security as your laptop has in the office. Do you have full disk encryption if it is stolen? These are some of the things that I worry about consistently and constantly. User behaviors. when you're working from home, it's real easy to take an asset, a business asset, and quickly just pop over to your Gmail, which you might not have been able to do in the office because it was blocked, and open up that email and read it. And oh my God, you're now infected, kind of thing. So these are some of the behaviors that we have to sort of trim ourselves and retrain ourselves to do. I'm lucky that I've been working from home for about 18 years now. I have a very nice setup, as you can see, with everything. And even an exercise device behind me that I use in between meetings. But you've got to stop and think, physical security, logical security, around your cybersecurity. It all has to play together for us to be successful to create that cybersecurity that we need to. Leah, do you have any additional advice?
Oh, that was fantastic, Rhonda. I love the you're bringing us into some real issues that we may not even think of, which is amazing. Maybe just to add, it's interesting. We're now in week 40 of working from home or something. It's incredible. But that first few months, the first couple of months especially, were really difficult for organizations that weren't used to having employees work from home. The sudden demand to work from home, obviously huge bandwidth requirements all of a sudden. And, this is not a new concept, working from home for most companies, but we did run into some situations like some government agencies who didn't have the ability, they didn't have employees who had laptops, right? So all of a sudden they were asking all of their employees to use their home devices, which of course we know has its own risks, and now they're connecting to through routers of their home routers and everything else, and like you said, VPN is always an issue, and attackers are looking for ways to get to the home routers and exploit them and so on. But we found as a provider of solutions, we had to immediately help out organizations who didn't know how to protect those home devices and get those protected as soon as possible. They just didn't have the infrastructure to support that kind of sudden shift. And so that's just additional challenges, right? And now, again, the user being the weak link, you've got all of these users on their home devices accessing corporate resources. So that I would just add to that it's a more standard problem, I suppose, but thank you, Rhonda, for your insights on that.
I would also like to add just a plug. Please make sure you understand and keep your firmware and your software of your home device routers and your devices, everybody's device in the house, yours, your kids' friends, whoever accesses your network. Because unless you segregated all those off, they're all at risk. Think about the IoT devices you have on your home network. So make sure your home router firmware is kept up to date. That is probably one of the largest things you can do to try to protect yourself while you're working.
Most people haven't even changed their password on their home.
Amen. Because I actually had a neighbor ask me for something, and I said, "What is your router's password?" And she looked at me very blankly, and I Googled it, and I said, "Never mind.
I have it.
It is now this." So you're right. A lot of people have not even changed the default passwords.
Sure. Oh my goodness, what a great conversation. So, inevitably in this space, we move into a discussion about privacy and security. So I live with two educators, and so I've been hearing a whole lot about things like, with the kids learning from home, having their screens on or off, and the concerns about that as it relates to privacy. And in my mind, I'm thinking security, of course, security. And similarly, Rhonda, you brought up the windows in the office and their access to the screen. These are things that the average citizen who's not a cybersecurity geek like us would not necessarily be thinking about. So in the context of sort of privacy and security, what do you think is needed to ensure that we actually do both, that appropriate protections are in both places? And Rhonda, could you start us off there?
I think part of what we have to do is work with some of these companies who are doing this. So let's just take an IoT device, for example, and I'll use a personal issue that happened. It's one of those fitness bands and I got one of those scales that you stand on, right? Unbeknownst to me, my mom calls me and congratulates me for losing weight. And I'm like, what? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? She goes, well, it's on the portal that you're sharing with friends. So unbeknownst to me, the default settings and the security was not as much as I'd want it to be. So this is where you've got to step back and look at some of these things that surround you, those voice assistants, and those kinds of things, and make sure that you do this. Now, I gave a talk to a major corporation one time on protecting your personal data, the Internet of Me, protecting your personal data. And someone said, well, where do you draw the line between privacy and security? And my response was, if the need and the benefit of the device provides me such a benefit that I'm willing to bend on some of the security. So it's a balancing act. That scale to me is all important to help me stay on track mentally and physically with my health. My blood pressure cuff that I use sometimes talks to my husband's phone instead of mine. I don't know why. But it does, it accidentally gives him my blood pressure readings instead of his blood pressure readings and vice versa. But it's necessary. So sometimes you have to get a good balancing act in there on what you're willing to give up on privacy, maybe for security, and vice versa. So sometimes it's individual choices if it's a personal kind of thing. And then, of course, we go to Victoria and everybody else where we've got regulatory issues coming out on privacy. And you just have to maintain that balancing act. It's always going to be a balancing act between those two things, I believe, and the risk you're willing to assume between all of that.
But it really does start with knowing you have a decision to make.
You
So
do.
You've got to be informed. That the transparency piece is so critically important. So you actually know to look. You know to ask.
Exactly. If you're not looking at all of the stuff in your house, like when I came home one time, we were having the air conditioner unit replaced. And my husband, I could hear him go, you need to be really quick before the wife gets home. Because if she finds out that this air conditioner unit is an IoT device running on our network and we have not segmented it off, I'm going to be in very big trouble. And unfortunately for him, I heard this, but it tells you, you've got to look at these things and make sure that you understand everything that's around you in this world. Sure. And how they all interact and what the security, or at least understand how they work and what you can do to minimize the risk to your security.
And making sure that you're just making wise decisions, eyes wide open.
Eyes wide open, correct.
Eyes wide open decisions.
Well, that's I was just going to say it to kind of complement what Rhonda said. One thing that did happen to us as well was we had all these attorneys working from home, and of course we have to keep any information, any conversation with our clients confidential. And I realized there are a lot of them that are talking about their Alexas and this and that. I, for example, work in the same office at home that my husband. He's on the other side of the desk, and I had to, and being the privacy attorney at the firm, say, okay, will you mind sending some kind of reminder telling the attorneys that they cannot have their Alexas listening to them while they're providing legal advice to their clients, because it's supposed to be confidential and privileged. And those are things that a lot of people didn't think about and didn't even know how to do. They're like, oh wait, we can change the settings on these things. So working from home has brought a lot of challenges, not only technical, but with just switching how we live our regular lives.
I mean, we even run into it on the marketing side now, right? It's, obviously we always have to be very cautious about what kind of information we're keeping. You think about sales and marketing trying to reach people now, they're all at home. right? So if you want to try to send anything to someone, obviously email and, finding other ways is a way around it. But let's say you want to send them a physical thank you. Well, now you're collecting their home address information and everything else. And, the privacy laws, and Victoria's the expert here, but, they keep getting more stringent. And I know all the organizations we deal with are dealing with a lot of different compliance regulations, whether it's HIPAA or GDPR. There's a lot of pressure on organizations now to comply. And that extends all the way through to everything we do on the marketing side of the house as well, right? And how we're keeping information.
That's great, Leah, and really a perfect segue to the next topic, which I'd like, welcome Victoria talking about. And that's this nexus between, we've talked about privacy a lot here, but between privacy and regulatory liability. And where do you see that going? What's going to be happening here in the days and years to come?
Well, I wish I knew exactly how it's going to pan out, but I think, as I mentioned, there's been, at least in the United States, a big push to have some federal privacy regulation. What we have right now is going to be impossible to keep up if we continue to just have the states come up with their own regulations. So as Leah mentioned, we have the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union. Now with Brexit, there's going to be a UK GDPR version starting next year in January. And then California got this amazing idea to kind of copy the GDPR and come up with the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, which, by the way, is also going to be replaced by the CPRA, California Privacy Rights Act, starting on January 1st of 2023. And is very similar in that it provides a lot of rights to the individuals, a lot of rights for them to have access to their information, to request to delete their information, to request to know what information is being collected and whether it's shared and with who is being shared. And as Leah said, I feel like in the beginning or in the past years, a lot of organizations were based on big data and collecting all the information that they possibly could have about their clients, so we can know what they like when they shop and their location and you name it, so they can personalize coupons and and do targeted advertising. But now you can just collect everything you want. And in fact, you don't want to do that because it's more risk of legal liability and more risk if there is a data security incident. So we are hoping that we're going to go to something that applies to the whole country. Otherwise, like with data breach notification laws, we have 50 states, 50 different laws. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a data breach from the legal standpoint, you have to look at the state of residence of every person whose data was violated or compromised. And we end up having to comply with 47, 48 states at one time. And if that happens, and on the privacy side, it will be very expensive and complicated for companies to comply. Now, there are some laws in Nevada, some laws in Maine, some laws in New York that are still kind of covered by complying with the CCPA. But if that's not the case, and we have to, and CPRA, for example, is way more complex and closer to what the GDPR requirements are, then it is going to be so hard to comply, let alone if the company has to comply with something else, like if they collect information from children and they have to comply with COPPA, if they have to comply with HIPAA, if they have to comply with FINRA. It's hopefully we'll get to a more uniform set of regulations that will be easier and cheaper to comply with.
And that would be really great. And so, in spite of our best efforts, to do all the right security things, to make sure we do the right privacy things, and inevitably bad things happen. And bad things will continue to happen to networks. So with the continued increase in breaches, we continue to hear about them, again, almost on a daily basis. What do you all think are the most important actions that companies need to take in order to protect their networks, protect their data, protect their intellectual property? And Rhonda, how about you start us off?
I'm going to try to share something here, Deborah. So let's cross our fingers and pray. that this works, and it is not. I have got silly little, exclamation signs. I'm not too sure why this thing hates me. So if they can get up, I think so hopefully we'll be able to get this out and get this to everybody. But sorry about that. But it's something that we talk about called prepare, protect, and recover. We've boiled some of the NIST work down to 3 simple principles. You need to prepare if you have an incident. So just like we do fire drills with our children in school, are you doing fire drills to prepare if there's a cyber incident? Because it's really not if it will happen, it will happen. The odds are against us, to be honest, because we have to be right all the time. And the bad guys only have to be right once. So it is going to happen. So are you prepared to do this? Do you have a good understanding of your inventory? That's another funny part. Do you have your comms plans? Inventory is always hysterical. When I come up, I go, what? There you go. Thank you. What's going on here? And what can do? So are you ready to protect? If there is a cyber emergency, do you have automation that will help you drop the network interface cards to limit that, potential cyber event? Have you penetration tested your applications? And do you know the easy ones? Are your patches up to date? The easy ones. Are you managing your user IDs properly? Do you have your network? And one of the things that we've seen with the compromises happening now is the bad guys are going after Active Directory and trying to compromise it so you can't recover easily. They're also going after your backup servers to compromise them so you can't restore easily. And then they are actually trying to exfiltrate data to put pressure on you to pay the ransomware. So, when we talk protect, we talk about, do you have that big red button that's going to protect your environment quickly through automation? And then recovery. Do you know who's going to make the decisions? Because everybody thinks their stuff is the most important of this, right? Do you have forensics experts and contracts with these guys? Trying to negotiate a forensic contract with somebody while you're in the middle of it is very difficult. Do you know what to do if you can't run your business without IT for 2 weeks? So if you look at what happened to AP Moller-Maersk in 2017, they actually had to bring in the old people, which makes me feel very old when they do this, that used to run the systems before automation came in so they could continue to get product out. Do you have a plan for this? So these are just some of the things that we say you can do to limit the potential of the cyber attack when something like this happens. And if you do prepare and protect well, hopefully the recover is really short at that point in time.
That's great, Rhonda.
Well, and I will. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I will like to jump on this one too, because obviously there is all that preparation that Rhonda mentioned, but from my standpoint and from what I do, there is a lot of preparation that has to go with that as well, from the legal aspect of it and to avoid cost and litigation. So, for example, when Rhonda mentioned the forensics, what a lot of companies don't know is that I'm not trying to get work here, but is that it is important to hire outside counsel. And as outside counsel, in my case, I'm the one who negotiates those contracts with the forensic team or any other third-party vendor, so that I can create that attorney-client relationship and keep all that information confidential. The worst thing that can happen is that you have a forensic team that works with the company, and then a court tells you have to disclose all your reports, like they did with Capital One recently. So if you are actually the attorney is the one that is hiring all these vendors, all of this could be protected, not discoverable in the case of litigation. And the same with anything. I mean, when you suffer a data breach, and companies sometimes trying to do good just want to disclose a statement saying, this happened and we didn't know. All of that are official statements that are later going to be read in court and are going to say, well, but you said, 24 hours after the attack happened, you say that you did this, or you say that there were only 1,000 records compromised, and here we're looking at millions, or all of that, kind of like in the movies, whatever you said is going to be used against you in a court of law. And it is true. And it happens a lot when we have to deal with that. Reputational cost, they have, no matter how great of an incident response plan companies have, everybody panics when there is a data breach. And there is a battle of egos because, the president is not going to look good, the CEOs, people are pointing at the IT team, you name it. So nobody really follows the plan that well. And they don't want to have their brand out there. For example, in notifications, there is an obligation that you have to put the logo and the name of the company. And I have had hours and hours of fights with CEOs of companies, or saying, well, can we put the brand under which we do business, but this is an AKA, but this is, and it's like, no, you should have thought about this when we were telling you that you needed cybersecurity and you thought it was very expensive. Well, guess what now you are putting your reputation, you mark your brand out there, and you're going to have to pay for that. So there is a lot of preparation that people don't really realize. And when something happens, they panic, and we can really solve there or help them with that when it's too late. And again, remember that anything that happens during a data breach, anything is potential for a lawsuit down the road. So the emails between employees with the huge subject line in caps, data breach, we just had a data breach. I'm like, don't use the B word.
Not a good idea, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, that's a legal conclusion. We don't know what's happening. You don't, because then you're sitting in the positions and reading the email. Well, it says here, huge, that you guys had a data breach and you knew it. And so it's hard to defend somebody when they are not prepared.
I will say, I echo everything you have, which is why when we say have a cyber attack plan, on that slide you might have seen, have your comms ready. Know what you're going to say and how you're going to react. Practice it like a fire drill, like when we were in grade school where we all, held hands and we knew where to meet and those kinds of things. You really have to, so you're not trying to figure it out as you go. Because that's where, and I totally agree with Victoria, that's where things are going to happen. You're going to say the wrong things. You're going to use the wrong terms, and you're going to get into a big boiling pot of hot water.
Well, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but with the right terms, maybe I have PTSD dealing with all these clients, but with talking about the wrong terms, the definition of what's personal information has changed and is very broad, and especially under GDPR, is pretty much anything could be personal information. And it's very often that I hear, well, there wasn't social security numbers or date of birth there, so it's no big deal. And I'm like, well, but you had emails, you had addresses, you have phone numbers, right? That's personal information. So they all notion that only social security or your credit card information was personal information has to be out the window, and you need to start worrying even if IP addresses and email addresses of your clients were compromised.
Leah,
Sorry,
you
Leah.
I'm just gonna add a little bit of color too. It is such an interesting conversation. I was thinking back to, we recently did a survey of global companies. We call it our cyber risk index, to really see, how are people feeling about their, have they been breached, and will they be breached in 2021? What does that look like? And sometimes people joke that there's only two kinds of companies, right? Those that have been breached and those that don't know about it. But in the survey, 76% of organizations admitted to having one successful attack this past year, but 23% had 7 or more, right? I mean, this is a real problem. And that was just this year in 2020. But I found it interesting to see, what they deemed as the core or the root cause for those issues. And the top issues were organizational misalignment and complexity. So perhaps the CISO doesn't have the authority to go in and ensure that proper security posture. There's shadow IT everywhere. You've got people building cloud apps that just, that are not, secure or under control. They also cited shortage of qualified personnel. And I think that's a topic we should come back to in a minute. But I did want to say, in terms of great topics that you guys brought up in terms of how to prepare for this kind of thing and make sure you're protecting your brand ahead of time and thinking about these things. But, when you are looking at protecting your assets in your organization, you really have to make sure you've got protection at every layer. And that's just something we haven't touched on yet. And that, that layer is going to be everything from your endpoint to your network, to your servers, to your cloud, to email. Those all require protection. And I think one of the things we've really seen is that, especially as we continue to transform our organizations, security has to be optimized for each of those environments. I'll give you a simple example. In the days when we just had physical data centers, you could put server security on and protect those servers. Well, a lot of companies try to just lift and shift that security when they move to a virtualized environment. But what we found is that just doesn't work. It doesn't scale. You need that kind of elastic scalability when you go to a virtualized environment and ultimately to the cloud. You have to have protection that's actually optimized for each layer of security. Optimized for VMware, optimized for AWS, Google, Azure. It's really, really important. And then the second big thing, and we see this a lot with CISOs under pressure now, and Rhonda can probably relate to this, but it's really hard when you are dealing with 50 or so security tools across your organization. And so we hear it every day. CISOs want to have some form of vendor consolidation. They want these layers of security to talk to each other and to share threat intelligence. They need a place where they can, SOCs or security operations centers are dealing with hundreds of thousands of alerts every day. They need a way to kind of sift that down and find the needle in the haystack. And so these security layers have to talk to each other. They have to share information. Information needs to be correlated and prioritized using big data analytics, security analytics to find that prioritized alert. People need to be able to, right back to Rhonda's initial point, they need to be resilient. They need to be able to prepare for, withstand, and rapidly recover from threats. And that means they need to be able to see what's going on and have security that's coordinated across all of these layers. So that's just something additional to think about on top of these other great points of advice.
That's great. What a great conversation. We have a question that's come in, and I think it's so relevant that we just need to chat about it a minute. Although I see Victoria has already said sit and cry, so that sounds like a good response. What happens when the cybersecurity firms themselves, like FireEye, get compromised? That was just reported earlier this week. A nation state compromise, which speaks to a level of sophistication that most of us won't experience, I would hope. But companies with a lot of jewels in the jewel box are subject to nation state attention. And so, what happens, while sit and cry is probably about right, because I think there's probably some of that, but, it really points to, and I'd love to hear from the three of you on it, it does point to the fact that none of us are immune. And despite our best efforts, there will still be those who are working to take advantage and look for opportunities.
Yes.
There was a weakness somewhere, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
There's somewhere there was a weakness, and even a company like that, So, Rhonda, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we have to remember. One, the old days of the castle moat mentality, as we say, is gone. People used to say, "Oh, my network will protect me," or "I have multiple layers of defense around my corporate network." As you can see from what happened to FireEye, it's gone. And so the mentality where, and if you saw what was, publicly stated was taken, it was the red team tools. These are tools that FireEye uses to test for weaknesses against about 16 or 17 vulnerabilities that were taken. And these are vulnerabilities for which there are patches or mitigations available. And what they do is the red team comes into an enterprise and it looks for those to see if they can find them and exploit them. So in your head, you've got to say, we can no longer hide behind the fact that I'm behind a corporate network. We have to patch and mitigate everything. You guys can hear in my voice that I'm just with clients and stuff. You cannot say, oh, the risk is low because my network will stop them. Because we have these end users, because we have these laptops, because the bad guys have figured out I need to switch tactics and quit trying to come in through the network, but coming through the VPN and coming through email and those kinds of things. So the first thing you have to do is, please, for God's sakes, patch and mitigate everything when these things come out. If you cannot, because your estate is so vast, then I would recommend you look at doing an assessment of what's actively being exploited at that time if you have to prioritize. If you have to prioritize, look at what's being actively exploited and patch that first and go down that priority list. And
this could be like a 1 hour. This is probably a 4-day discussion.
This could be all darn day.
Right. But I do, there's one topic we really do kind of have to get to, because it was in the description for our session, but it's also close to my heart. And, if we look at the four of us, 4 accomplished women in cybersecurity, but not only that, our experiences are diverse, but we are a diverse group. But truthfully, we don't represent the diversity in cybersecurity, generally speaking. It is not such a diverse field. And so I'm going to kind of combine a couple of thoughts. What is it going to take to improve diversity and inclusion in the field? And secondly, and as equally as important, how do we get more talent? And there's a nexus there probably. How do we get more talent? Because clearly this is not going away. This is a space that is here to stay. How do we get more folks interested in pursuing cybersecurity careers? So I don't know, Leah, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's a bit of a double whammy effect here, right? In general, there's a cybersecurity shortage, right? We've got over millions of jobs available and we just can't fill them. And then on top of that, we've got a diversity issue, right? Where they say only 11% of cybersecurity jobs are filled by women, as an example. So, I think, especially in the space that I'm in, I think it's incumbent upon companies like ours to help try to fill that gap in any way that we can, and also improve diversity, inclusion, and equity. So there's a couple things that we do as a company. One is that we do have a program where we hire new grads that came out of computer science or engineering and that kind of thing. We have a specific program called our CPITS, which stands for Certification Program in IT Security. And we actually bring these people on and train them for 10 weeks. Really until they're not even full-time employees or anything. We just bring them on, train them for 10 weeks, and then we hire the best ones and we encourage the others to get hired by our channel partners or organizations that we work with. But we have to create that cybersecurity expertise, right? We have to help create that. We have another program in place called our general management program, where we actually hire people that have not necessarily any IT or security expertise. They could have been working at Starbucks, and we bring these folks in and we train them for a few months. And again, with the idea of hiring the best ones, and perhaps they don't go right into a technical job. They may start in a more of an inside sales position, but it's a way of building that expertise. We have a third program I can think of, which is, and it's sort of a side commentary that, yeah, we want to get more people who are hands-on on the keyboard and doing cybersecurity, building and protecting against hackers. But we also want, just in general, more people in the industry. And so one of the things we do is we have a business management new grad program where we bring in new hires and we put them through an internship program for 2 years where they work in different departments and learn different parts of the job and then go on to a certain department. So I think it's incumbent upon us to think outside the box, to hire people that may not have already had cybersecurity as their career path and help create that as a career path. I will mention that with these programs, we've hired over 40%, not quite 50, we're going for that, but over 40% have been women, which is much higher than the average in the industry. And that's part of our initiative here, is to make sure that we can help close that gap while we're helping to close the skills gap.
So that's a great, and so you leave us with some hope, Leah. Thank you. We are literally out of time. But what a fabulous discussion. I don't know if either Rhonda or Victoria just have something they just can't help but try to get into this topic. And I'm getting the cords being pulled here, so we're going to have to get off stage. But if you had anything to finally add to this really important topic, then I think we can take 30 seconds to do that.
I will want to say that I will be more than happy to connect with anyone on Preactive on LinkedIn, and I have a lot to say about diversity. But I also think that that while there is a lot of burden that has been put on us and diverse minorities to kind of help each other and do that, I think companies need to take responsibility and mentor and develop these people, as Leah mentioned, because they are complaining about the lack of people, but then they don't give really the chance to anybody to develop and train and require 10 years of experience from the get-go. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. It's never going to happen if you don't actually put somebody and train them and develop them so that they can have that experience.
Great, thank you. And Rhonda, you're going to close us out.
Just a couple things. One, I think we need to remove the stigma. When you talk to young ladies, young girls in STEM, and you talk about security, that's not one of the things that comes top of mind, unfortunately. Because there's just a stigma. When you think security, you think police, you think Army, Navy, military kind of stuff, and that's not what we're about. And we have to be able to enable some of the more experienced workers, I'll say it like that can't meet some of the criteria to bring that wealth of experience and diversity to the table to help us.
Thank you so much. Leah, Victoria, Rhonda, you were fabulous. And I hope that it was as good for you as it was for me, for all of those that participated. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate. Everybody have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. That was such an eye-opening discussion. We are going to head over to Elise Hart, who is the founder of Freebird Mojo. We're going to take a moment to do a stretch break. I know everyone wants to stand up after especially that incredible discussion we just had.
Oh my gosh, thank you, all of you. I'm a little scared, but happy that you're on it, all of you. Well, I hope this will help us transition. And my name is Elise Hart, and we're going to do some stretches and some movements. And before I put lots of words on there, let's just start. So let's just do 3 deep breaths. There goes Cookie, my assistant. And we're going to, if you'd like to sit, that's okay. If you want to get up, please do. It works either way. Let's just take your wings out and just do a little check in your location here so that you're not knocking things over. We'll be standing the whole time or sitting. So bring the arms up and just bring them towards the sky. And we're going to exhale with a little sigh as the palms face your body, as if we're clearing away anything extraneous, the overwhelm. And we're just refreshing ourselves. So we're combing through this system of ours, and we're using some breath. Now let's just begin with a gentle bounce. I'm allowing my hands to just go loose from my wrists. It's a great antidote to being on our computer and our devices. So bring the hands loose. Little space in between the fingers, each and every one of them. We're going to do this for about 12, 13 minutes, not this move in particular, but we're going to just move so that we are just letting go again. Allow yourself to feel as though you're shaking the center of your body, which you are, and then bring the palms up. You can stop the legs shaking and just bring the palms up. Bouncing and shaking is an amazing way to dispel any excess energy or any that you've collected. And bring it down. And bring the arms out. Let's do a little rock and roll. So just do a little weight transfer. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I can see some of you. I'm glad you're wiggling. So just imagine that you have little pockets of stagnation or stuckness, and as you're moving, it's moving. Taking the hands up towards the neck, the chest, like a warrior, Jane, Tarzan kind of movement here. But we're breaking up again. Anything stuck here, this is our emotional center. And just come down the inside of the arm so we can get some circulation going. We are mostly fluid. We want everything to flow well, come across. And there are some high traffic zones in our body, usually our necks, our shoulders, low back. Unless we tend to them often, they tend to get kind of stuck. So just take a moment, feel into that. Notice if the temperature of your hands feel a little warmer, maybe there's a little tingle. Now we're just going to take our arms and we're going to do a little movement with the shoulders and with the wrists and with the hands once again. And then the other direction. You know, when we're moving, we're optimizing, making a good connection up to the brain and the body. Hands interlaced. Little roll. Other direction. Now here's kind of a trippy one that you wouldn't think about, but we're going to take one hand, you can mirror me, and just put this on the elbow. And then we're going to take that arm down and through, but focus on the hand that is circling that elbow joint. So just warming up that joint. Joints also are where our energy oftentimes gets stuck, and then it reads as an ache. And come on down. Again, let's compare. Put the arms down. Notice if this one that you just massaged so gently might feel a little bit longer. It might even be a little bit longer. So we bring our heads to work. We're really smart. And our bodies also have a ton of information. And so keeping your body feeling alive and vibrant, making sure that we focus on it a little bit and that we clear so we have room for more information, more good stuff, is a very good habit to get into. All right, and then come on down. And do a couple more things for the shoulders. So take the arms out and you're going to put your focus over on the palm that's facing upward. The other hand, we're just going to come down. So you're feeling a nice rotation in the shoulder. Keep the arms like so. I'm looking at that palm, and now I'm going to gently, as if I'm rolling something through my body and sending it out this way. I'm going to take this kind of slow, inhaling, turn, exhaling. Now you should feel your shoulders in the socket, gently moving. Now you can't do any of this wrong except move into pain in a big way. So just move to the level of where it feels easy for you. One more. And we're going to come on down. Final couple of things. We're going to move into an easier flow state. So the hands come up as if they're being pulled by strings, like you're a marionette, and down come the elbows. Nice and soft. We've changed the tempo a little bit. We're inhaling, we're feeling ease. And exhale. Inhale, And exhale. You know, pushing it all the time is like spending all your money in one place. It's nice to learn pacing. And we're feeling into what flow feels like, where you're uniting your breath and your movement. Really lovely. Come on down for the final piece so that we connect the head, the emotional center and heart, and the gut, belly, brain. So take your hands off to your sides. We're just going to come on up. This is called turning the wheel, as if you're placing a very precious vase over on a table. So as we come up and skim the body, we inhale just gently. If you're stressed, exhale out the mouth. If you want to build strength, you're just breathing in the nose, out the nose. So as we come up, we're bringing in peace, security, vibrance. As we move the arms out, worry, doubt, fear. Maybe some confusion. And inhaling stability from the ground. Exhaling. Maybe distraction. Inhaling, bringing your full self, your powerful self, the empowered self that you're going to bring forth into the world, outward. And then we'll do one more. And we're going to come on up. We're going to bring the arms out like we're hugging a tree. Feet are hips width apart. And the elbows come closer to the body. And the hands are just going to be relaxed here, like you're holding a ball. This is a very strong and soft pose. Inside the body, you might feel that we've unleashed a little more energy. It's subtle, of course. And see if the chest doesn't feel a little open, more open. You've cultivated a lot more fluidity here. You have room for bringing in what it is that you want. And if you feel like hanging out for 1 second, for like 1 minute more, just take a seat, because there's something important about coming together in calmness. It gives everybody else permission also. So just if you're seated, feel the chair holding you. And I know the temptation is to look at each other here, but for 1 minute, go inside yourself. Lower your eyes. I'll watch the time. I promise you, 30 seconds. And just feel where it is in your body that's spacious. And feel the edges of your skin inside your body. Sense and imagine that. Keep breathing gently. Don't change it. And now feel outside of your body. And come on. Rub your fingernails together. And you can go back refreshed.
That was so nice, Elise. Thank you so much. I think I loved watching everyone take a break, take a moment to breathe in everything happening in the last 3 days of our wonderful summit.
So much.
Wonderful.
But one more quick thing. I will be back for 30. That was a taste tease, an appetizer. At lunchtime, I will be doing a 30-minute longer form. And then later on this afternoon, another 10-minute quickie that's going to be self-massage and very self-soothing. So I hope to see you there. Oh, it's really beautiful. Okay, so thank you so much to all of you who are making this happen.
Thank you, Elise. So as we've taken that wonderful breather, we're going to head into our next panel. I would like to introduce Lamondre Pugh, who is our moderator today. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer of RU Global Impact. And our discussion today is going to be prioritizing sustainability, shifting from quick fixes to long-term solutions. Hi, Lamondre.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you so much for the introduction. And let me say, I just want to first of all say thank you to Witty for putting this together. And I will tell you, this has been one of the best organized virtual conferences that I've been a part of. And just the work that David and Peggy and everyone associated with it, it's just been really amazing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the good work that you all have done, and it's amazing. So this particular session is all about sustainability. It's about shifting from quick fixes to long-term solutions. And I will tell you that so often when we hear terms like sustainability, we have a general concept as to what they mean, but many times we're not sure exactly how to apply it to what it is that we do. So today, my goal is to present and to share some ideas from our incredible panelists that will help you understand sustainability more and figure out how to best incorporate it into your work. As I said, the term sustainability in some senses has become one of those buzzwords. It's one of those things where, but people hear it, and again, it's kind of like, yeah. I know what that means. That's that environmental thing. That's what that is. Oh, you mean we need to recycle? That's what you're talking about when you say sustainability. When the truth is, all of those things can be a part of sustainability, but sustainability is not about the part. Sustainability is really about the whole. So here's a definition that is probably most widely accepted about the term sustainability. And it's about meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that comes from the Bertlands report of 1987. But there are even some other definitions that have come out about sustainability. For example, the Australian government released a definition of sustainability. It was very similar to this, but also incorporated species as opposed to just people and generations of people. And so as the definition grows and evolves, there are so many other things that are added to it. And I particularly like this concept of sustainability, that sustainability really is about the ability to continue or to endure, period. And the reason that I like that is because it's broad enough to cover all of the pieces that we're talking about, but it's specific enough that it helps us to move forward with this. So just to give you a little bit of background about my view of sustainability and how this really came about. Before the Industrial Revolution, we were primarily agricultural, and there were limits on what we could do. Why were there limits? Well, because usually, especially with an agricultural society, individuals were limited to what they could do because it was based on the size of their family or how many animals they had and what those animals could produce. Well, of course, when we went from manual to mechanical, that changed. That changed dramatically, and was somewhere around the mid 20th century to the late 20th century that those things took off exponentially. And we entered an era where human industrial activity became the primary driver for changes in Earth's systems. And what that really represented to us, that was now, instead of it being people and goods that were scarce, and natural resources being plentiful, it's now flipped, where people and goods are everywhere, but it's those natural resources that's being depleted, therefore making the system as we know it, that industrial system, unsustainable. And so now it's a time for us to kind of change the way that we think about sustainability, that we think about our approach to it. And so let me give you this as well. There are basically three essential elements when we look at sustainability. Some people like to call it a three-legged stool. Well, I understand the concept of a three-legged stool. You know, if one of those elements is not there, the stool falls. But the truth is, I believe it's way more interconnected than a three-legged stool. I think that sustainability is this, and these are the three elements. It's environmental, it's societal, and it's economics, okay? Those are the three elements, but I like to look at it like this, is that economy sits inside of society, all right? So economics is a construct of a social construct. And inside of that, or inside of the bigger, or outside of that is the environment. In other words, all of it fits within the environment. So it goes from economy, society to environment. So those are the three legs: environment, society, and economy. And so all of those things, those two other things, are enveloped inside of environment. So if any one of those, if there's an issue with the economy, it affects society, and of course it's going to affect the environment, and vice versa. So all of it is interconnected, and all of it plays within each other. So my role, and part of what I believe my mission is to help change how we look at sustainability and what it means for our environments, what it means for our society, what it means for our economy. In other words, where we are now, none of them can be pulled down and say, hey, we're just going to focus on this. Hey, we're just going to look at this. In order for a system to be sustainable, we have to look at all three of the systems, and not as individual pieces, but how they interrelate as the whole. So that is the framework that I'm working from today. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move to our panelists. And first, we're going to have Jessica tell us a little bit more about her work and what she's doing in sustainability. Jessica?
Thank you so much, Lamondre. That was an incredible definition taken from many different angles. The first one you kicked off with has actually been adopted when the United Nations set up their Sustainable Development Goals, which over 12,000 companies and organizations have committed to aligning with. So I'm just gonna build off of that first definition, because we are one of those 12,000 companies. I only have about 5 minutes to speak, so I'm going to try and provide a little bit of context on our work, and think of this for all of you as an invitation to continue the conversations, not just within this hour, but obviously feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am the head of social impact here at Unity Technologies. For those of you who don't know Unity Technologies, we are a platform that was born out of the video game industry. So about 60–70% of the world's video games are actually built with Unity Technologies as the engine. But since the evolution of virtual reality and augmented reality, we've gone into almost every other industry in the world. Architecture, engineering, and construction use Unity to simulate. Energy companies use Unity to simulate their energy investments. And then automotive companies actually use Unity to simulate a first car. Those of you who may not know this, when an initial car is designed, it can cost $6 billion to create an initial prototype. And with the power of Unity as a platform, you can save all the waste and time and money and create your initial simulation within the Unity platform. So you can already start to understand why we as a company and organization are so focused on social impact here at Unity. As Lamondre said, the definition is so varied and so broad and has been unfortunately so politicized as well. Independent of where you are on the political spectrum, it eventually loses its definition because of the place that it's taken in our politics and then the place that it's taken in our culture. But I think I'll sum it up in our perspective that environment and sustainability is really the defining factor in restructuring our other two legs of the stool, as Lamondre described. So we see environment and sustainability for the next 50 years completely restructuring our economy. Massive businesses, not just Unity, but much larger businesses have or are in the process of completely restructuring their supply chain and their workflow to be able to move to a sustainable approach. Mind you, not because they want to, but because they have to. It has no longer been possible for them to drive the profits that they're looking for unless they become fully sustainable. So again, when we look at the next 50 years, we see the environment as completely disrupting and reorganizing our economy from a sustainable perspective, our global economy. And of course, the second area is our society, as Lamondre said, that third leg of the stool, our communities. And so our behavior is already changing. The way that we operate is already changing. You know, a lot of us can, trace COVID and the global pandemic to a question around sustainability as well, which has obviously changed entirely how we lead our lives. So that's the frame of reference that we approach this here with Unity. I do think I get the opportunity to share a few slides. So I just wanted to ground you a little bit more within our work. So I'm going to go ahead and share our screen. So let me actually start here first with let's see here. I think this will end up working. It's not actually showing up. Can you see my slide there? Okay, perfect. I'm going to ground you in an eye chart, but I just wanted to backward map for you how we think about our business and sustainability overall. This is a theory of change model. Again, really an eye chart, but we've taken our entire business and said we as a company are able to affect the environment, education, economic development, and digital health and well-being, all the way back to inputs and investments in three areas. Our company talent, so our employee base, our technology. We give away over $1 billion worth of product a year to drive education, economic opportunity, and sustainability. And then the third area, those of you who may not know, recently Unity went public about 3 months ago. And prior to going public, we took our equity and donated it to a charitable fund. So I've created a foundation. So that will also be funding our sustainability work. And so you may be wondering, what does this actually mean? And how do we think about this in practicality? We were able to host a Unity for Humanity summit a few months ago, where we had about 15,000 people from around the world joining us and focusing around the areas that we care most about: sustainability, education, and economic opportunity. And as part of that summit, we did select from the thousands of experiences that were made with Unity, some of the ones that we wanted to highlight that really focused on environment and sustainability. So just a few examples here. Drop in the Ocean was actually created by Philippe Cousteau, who's the grandson of Jacques Cousteau. For those of you who don't know, he created diving, Jacques Cousteau. So Philippe Cousteau, 2 generations later, has created a Made with Unity experience that focuses on microplastics and the impact in the ocean. As you guys know, microplastics you can't even see. So with virtual reality, we've created an experience where you can actually get up close to microplastics and better understand the impact that they're having. Another great example is My Africa Elephant Keeper. This was a Made with Unity experience that was created actually with Conservation International and funding from Tiffany & Company, which really is about how do you come into this Made with Unity experience and take a very sick elephant and bring that elephant back to health and back to life based on the poaching that's happened. Greenland melting gets you up close and personal with what is happening right now with the melting of the ice cap. So all of these are experiences that help us as individuals understand the impact that we're having on the environment. But in addition to that, motivate us as individuals to take action and determine, what is the change we can make. The other key piece about Unity, as I mentioned, we are working with these massive organizations. Volkswagen is a great example where they're taking Unity and they're making an automotive company much more sustainable by taking the power of real-time 3D and trying to offset everything that they do from a waste and physical perspective to be able to model their cars, and construction companies, being able to save waste and become more environmentally efficient by using the power of Unity and real-time 3D, which is the name of the industry that we operate within. So I'll go ahead and pause there because I think my time is officially up. Excited to hear from all of you, answer questions, and I'll hand it back to you, Lamondre, to continue.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That's some pretty amazing stuff going on there. I tell you, especially with the automotive, so many pieces there. So our next presenter is Zephyr Gold. She is with Rainforest Connection. Zephyr.
All right. Hi, everybody. So great to be here today, and so great to be part of this panel. Thank you so much, Lamondre, for having me here, and thanks so much, Jessica. So far, that was really inspiring, and I love to hear about what other great work people are doing. So thanks so much. I thought I would just start off with just sharing my screen and showing just a few slides here. Mostly just because it's kind of fun to see pictures of the rainforest, and I thought it could be kind of nice to have like a more of an an interactive. Oops, I just hit share instead of the. Oops, sorry about that. It would be fun to just have some interactive slides here, so you can kind of take a look at what we do here at Rainforest Connection. So for those of you who don't know who we are, Rainforest Connection we're a nonprofit tech startup, and essentially we're built on the premise that anyone can really have an idea that can make a difference in sustainability and the environmental space. Our CEO Topher came up with the concept of recycling old cell phones and taking recycled cell phones and putting those basically with solar panels, putting those out into the treetop canopy in the rainforests, and having those cell phones actually be like the ears of the rainforest and capture that audio. And if there's anything like a chainsaw or a gunshot or any kind of illegal activity happening, that audio is essentially streamed through the cell phone over the cell phone network into the cloud, where we then have an AI machine learning that runs over that audio, detects that sound, and then is able to send alerts to rangers on the ground. So it's pretty exciting because we've been able to do this. We've been around since 2013, and our hardware technology has been used to basically for preventing these illegal threats, and then also monitoring biodiversity. So like I kind of mentioned, it's been a really exciting time for us because in addition to really focusing on halting illegal activity in the rainforest around the world, Rainforest Connection has also moved into like the biodiversity monitoring space as well. So making sure that we are, okay, this is actually a cool photo of our guardian. So I did want to just share this with the group as well. So we have these are the solar panels here. You can see the solar panels. It's kind of the only part you can see. This is our COO actually installing the guardian in the tree. And essentially underneath the solar panels, you're able to actually see the guardian itself, which is essentially just it's an acoustic device that's capturing audio from the surrounding ambient area. And then from there, that audio is then of course being analyzed to make sure that if there's any sounds of anything like chainsaws or gunshots or any illegal activity that's going on in the area is then sent to the mobile app, which rangers have on the ground, and then they're able to intervene in those on those illegal activities. And so one thing that's kind of really special about us, and I'm going to not do any more slides because I think it's just more helpful to kind of talk in general instead of death by PowerPoint, is here, let me just stop sharing here. 1 second, sorry. So one thing that's really special about us as an organization is that we have been really dedicated from the very beginning to work with organizations that are already established on the ground. So instead of, coming in, building technology and then like handing it over and saying, here you go, good luck, we are really committed to finding organizations that are already working on the ground. They're already working to protect the rainforest space themselves. So they've already have the structure in place. They already have, staff people in place. They already have everything ready. So what we're doing is we're just coming in, we're providing them the tools and technology that they need in order to be successful and to be much more efficient in what they're doing. So instead of having rangers that are trying to cover, this huge amount of space by themselves by literally just like listening for sounds, they now have these this technology that allows them to know exactly where those sounds are coming from using GPS, and then being able to go and actually intervene successfully. So so we really see our goal as being not just there to provide that technology and tools to allow people to be successful, but really to empower people that are already on the ground, allowing these community organizations that giving them the tools that they need in order to do their jobs better. So that's a big differentiator for us, that we actually are working closely with these communities on the ground. So whether it's like an Indian tribe, or it's an organization that exists solely to protect the forest. So that's just something really cool about us. So I don't want to talk too much longer, but that's just basically in a nutshell what we do at Rainforest Connection. And I could talk more about the biodiversity monitoring, but I think it's just important to open this up and have more dialogue with everyone else in the audience and get a sense as to what people really want to hear more about. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Zephyr. That was really amazing and fascinating stuff. I mean, being able to be the ears of the forest and determine what's going on and help to monitor that. And so now we do want to move to more questions, and there's some questions that I have here because I really want this to be an open dialogue where we can really exchange ideas. So submit your questions as you go along. And we'll talk about this. So I'm going to back up a little bit because I saw someone ask specifically what were the 3 pillars. And an easy way to remember the 3 pillars, there are environment, society, and economics. And the 3 Ps, planet, people, and profit. So if you remember the 3 Ps, planet, people, and profit, those are the 3 pillars of sustainability. Now, with all of that, Zephyr just mentioned biodiversity as a part of what they are looking at with the connection, with Rainforest Connection. One of the things that is so important to the concept of sustainability is diversity. In other words, in order for, remember I told you that that sustainability was about a system's ability to endure over time. And one of the ways that a system does that is by being robust. And one of the ways that you enhance how robust a system is by having diversity. See, so often we tend to think about things in linear terms. Well, with sustainability, we have to move to more of a cyclical way of thinking. It's an imperative that we think in those terms. And so diversity then becomes that piece where we're not monolithic, where we're not just like a single specimen with similar entities, but the strength and sustainability really comes from the diversity that's represented in sustainability. So Zephyr, let's talk a little bit more about the biodiversity work that you all are doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's so we've been around since 2013, but in the last year or so, we really recognize that it's not just about, stopping illegal logging. It's not just about protecting forests from being destroyed. Like it's really about like this larger ecosystem view, and we need to protect the biodiversity that's within that ecosystem. So so we actually now have a science team. So we combined with another organization in the last year. We have a science team now. They are ecologists, biologists, and they are out there, and they've published all kinds of papers in the space and et cetera, et cetera. But the really beautiful part is that now we have these, this platform that allows these scientists to basically go out, collect audio using devices. There's a number of different recording devices that these scientists can use. They go out there, they record the audio, and then they're able to ingest that audio using our platform, and then able to analyze that audio using there's a few different types of technologies that we have. Object recognition is one, AI is another, CNNs, and be able to identify those endangered species. So, so from there, they're able to identify the endangered species that exist, and then they can actually form insights and conclusions on that data, and then see, like, are these conservation interventions that we're suggesting, are they even useful? Like, are they even making any difference? So we're allowing these scientists to have the data to get that awareness, to see, like, are we actually really making a difference with some of these interventions that we have going? And it really allows them to be able to, with that data, we have the information and the education, and then we can spread awareness as to what we should be doing differently and which interventions are effective and which ones aren't. So it's a really powerful tool. The other thing I'll just mention real quick is the soundscape analysis too, where you're able to really look at what the soundscape looks like. So, really looking at the richness, it's not just about, like, are there 50 species present, but what's the composition of the species that are there? Right. Are they chipmunks, and are they squirrels, or are they, some sort of very unusual bird, or some sort of really unusual monkey that's present in there. Like, we need our ecosystem. It's so critical that we have all this biodiversity has to be in the right way, right? Right. And so that's just a really critical aspect. And so the soundscape analysis allows the scientists to really easily see on a screen, like, oh wow, okay, this is an area that is very, very rich, and we need to protect this area versus another area that may not be as crucial to protect. So.
Right. I just saw a question in the chat that asked the question, are these companies or these countries that you are working in, are they eager that you're there? Are they happy that you're there to work with them? And what has been that experience for you all?
Yeah, to be honest, we get contacted by so many people that want to work with us. It's overwhelming. We get every day, Facebook, social media, please work with us. Please come to our country. Please help us. We need help. Like, our forests are being destroyed. And it's pretty heartbreaking, honestly. It's the amount of people that want to do something in this space is just, it's incredible. And yet there just isn't the money to support it, right? So what we do with these organizations that are, like I said, that are already on the ground, that are established, we help them find funders. So we'll work with them to go to, like, a foundation that we may know of, or maybe it's a corporation, like Huawei or Hitachi or Google, one of these big corporations that have the funding to support such a project. So we'll go and we'll advocate for this organization, and we'll help them get that funding. But we can, we're limited. We're a small team, right? We're only 20 people. So we do our best to do that, but we really can't support as many of these countries that want our help. So I would say it's sort of the opposite, where it's not like we're coming to the country and we're saying, hey, we need to help you protect the rainforest. It's like, no, they're coming to us and they're saying, we need your help. And we're purely reacting to demand, and we're trying our best to meet that demand. And we're not even close to being able to meet the demand of what's out there, but we're doing our best. So, absolutely.
Jessica, same question. How have you all been received in terms of working with different organizations and companies?
So we are we're a very global company. I think, we have customers and users in literally every country in the world, including North Korea. And so many of our operations are in China, in East Asia, in India. In addition to that, we do quite a bit of work in Africa. as well. And I would have to say the innovation that we are seeing in these countries is unbelievable. I mean, it's incredibly forward thinking, the approaches, the reusability, both at an individual level, at a company level, and then at a government level. I was on a flight to Senegal last year, and sitting next to a bunch of US Bay Area, I live in San Francisco-based investors who are traveling specifically to Western Africa to look at investments, because that is the leading investment area. And that's where the leading innovation is coming from right now with solar energy. And so I think, the global perspective is essential in where we look at the answers to these challenges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you both will work with organizations that are seriously focused on environmental issues, but many corporations are not. Do corporations have a responsibility to help society solve the environmental issues? And if so, what are some of the ways that corporations can begin to look at this issue?
Yeah, I'll go ahead maybe and tackle that and hand it over to you, Zephyr, after, if that works as well, because I think we come at it from two different perspectives. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, because I just think that this image and this approach is so powerful. For those of you who are familiar with sustainability, this is exactly how every corporation looks at their work. It's a very well-known framework around what scope are you operating in, scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3. And by the way, I think the key thing to understand now is if you are a public company in the world, you are now being evaluated on your sustainability strategy. It is not an option. It is called ESG ratings, environment, sustainability, and corporate governance. And a public company has to give an annual report on their ESG ratings, and the asset managers, the major assets that handle personal retirements and pensions, have said as of last year, this is Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, that he will deliberately de-invest from a company if they are not focused on sustainability. So the way that we analyze these companies, Unity included, from an ESG perspective is, number one, what's their direct impact on the environment? That's scope 1. What are you doing with your own facilities, your own vehicles in directly impacting the environment? And what is the carbon impact? This is all about carbon, by the way, right now. As we know, we've got 5 years to make a change in carbon, and that's pretty much it. Then there is scope 2, which is what's the indirect impact? How are you looking at your own supply chain? What goods you're purchasing? How are you looking at employee business travel, commuting, all of the building spaces that you lease, the waste generated? So these are all of your upstream activities, and scope 2 and scope 3 and indirect. And then downstream activities. Again, this is about how is what you are creating thought of from a sustainability perspective. Even all of us, if you're buying something on Amazon, before you hit buy, are you trying to figure out how you're recycling it, or the end of life of what you are about to purchase? That's a really important, not only consumer behavior, but business behavior. How will we end of life these investments and these changes? So this is really how all public companies are looking at it, and how all public companies must now be reporting on it. And just to wrap up, Larry Fink and BlackRock did, in their first sustainability report 4 months after this announcement, pull back investments from 60 companies that they named publicly, and provided a poor rating on. So it's moved from a nice to have to a must have.
Right. Jessica? I'm sorry, Jessica.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Jessica. That's great news. I'm really excited to hear about that. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, one of the ways that we've really, another kind of differentiator for Rainforest Connection compared to a lot of other nonprofits, is that we've really worked closely with some really big companies like Google, Hitachi, Huawei, among them. And I think the reason why we've been successful at doing that and getting that support from these big companies is because is that we've really talked about, like, what are some project opportunities where they can actually benefit, so they're benefiting just as much as we are. So it's not just about benefiting from a standpoint of like, oh, look, we're helping the rainforests around the world. Like, look at us, we're such a great company. Not in terms of that. I mean, there's that too, of course, like that's nice, but But it's really like, what we're doing is AI, right? So we have like this huge trove of data in the rainforest that we collect, all this audio that we collect. And a lot of these big companies are really interested in being able to analyze that data and being able to look at like, how do we, in terms of our own AI and improving our own AI, like you can, they don't have access to like wide ranges of sounds, for instance, to be able to improve their own AI. So there's been project opportunities where some of these companies are very interested in working with us on specific things. So whether it's, Huawei came in and they said, hey, we'd love to help you guys because you are recycling phones. Like we want to help support you in that way and give you phones to be able to be more successful. So it's just kind of a very basic, tangible example, but it's a way in which we were able to really benefit from the generosity of this big, large company. And I think that there's really a lot more of that could be done if we're really conscious of how we can come to these companies and propose different project ways, or what are some ways that they can really make a difference in this space, and not just expect them to come up with ideas on their own, but really present ideas to them and say, hey, these are some ways in which you could really make a difference in this space, and make it easy for them to just like sign a check and send it to us, So I just think it's really important that we really consider that, like these companies need to know why they're doing it as well, and it needs to be mutually beneficial to them.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that is important for us to do is to approach sustainability, particularly with companies from a self-serving perspective. And what I mean by that, sustainability at its best is a win-win situation for every factor involved, for every entity involved. And so often we have approached it from a perspective of environment versus profit. And instead of a versus conversation, we really need to look at it from the perspective of we're in all of this together. We're together in this, and there has to be a way that we can create products that are reusable, recyclable, and services that are repeatable. There has to be a way that we can find where we can do more with less and still make it profitable and still make it so that a diversity of people can really benefit from this. And this is the ultimate call of sustainability. This is our ultimate goal. Again, we have to move from a linear way of thinking to a more cyclical way of thinking. And so leading into from that, from both of your responses, it makes me think, so how can we foster more public and private collaborations in order to push the concept of sustainability, and what might that look like if you have an example of it?
Do you want to? Okay, I'll go ahead and go. Who goes first? I'm going to answer this question squarely from a U.S. America perspective, which I think the opportunity for the public-private collaboration is really focused on jobs, which is how do we reskill our talent base, whether it's high school educated or college educated, how do we reskill our talent base for the incredible talent needed in the green economy? And from a public perspective, how do we invest in that job reskilling, job training quickly? 6-month turnaround badging into, strong income paying jobs so people have good economic opportunity for themselves and their families and have the skills for the green economy, which will be enduring for the future.
Right. Absolutely. Zephyr?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that, we found like in South America, for instance, in Ecuador, people are making like $2 for every tree that they cut down, things like that, where it's like these small amounts that are, but like life-changing for people that live in those countries. And so, what are some ways that we, not just Rainforest Connection, but larger entities, other community organizations, what are ways that we can help people employ people? How can we give them jobs, other jobs that they can do? What are ways that we can really support them so that they're not having to rely on that, because it's a real economics thing. Like you said, Lamondre, it's like, if you don't have the money to buy food for your family, like you're going to go, cut down trees. That's just the reality. And so we have to help people come up with alternatives. We can't just say like, you can't do this. We have to come up with reliable, decent alternatives for them.
Right. And I'll tell you, that's one of that would be my next question. We know that the green economy is going to open up doors for earnings that were not there before. How can we ensure that communities that have been traditionally marginalized can enjoy, can be a part of that economic boost that will come from the green economy? Because in many instances, it has been approached in a very segregated kind of approach. But how do we ensure that marginalized communities can participate in this new green economy? Jessica.
Yeah, we do a lot of work on this area from the work at Unity. We educate about 1.5 million people a month on the Unity platform and reskilling and upskilling into those areas. And what we care most about is that the people who are reskilling and upskilling represent the world we live in, not the people who naturally gravitate towards it. So we are very, very deliberate in investing in community-based programs that really support marginalized communities, both from a financial grant perspective, as well as helping to support any of their educators with training and reskilling, not just for the students, but for the educators on this new technology. And then also obviously with free products and services. So we have a very deliberate, proactive focus on reskilling and upskilling. And I would just mirror that same approach as required for organizations and companies that can hire that entry-level talent into the green economy too.
Right. Now tell me, where did that intentionality come from with your organization?
It comes from all levels. It comes from the board, from ourselves at the executive level, from entry-level employees. As I mentioned, we're a very global company too. We were founded out of Copenhagen. So we are not necessarily US based per se, but that global focus is represented in all 40 of our locations too. And it really comes from this belief that, Unity is essentially a storytelling creative platform. Mm-hmm. We cannot have a group of, frankly, homogenous men telling the world stories. It needs to be inclusive and representative of the world we live in.
Right. Zephyr.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just add another example there. So, I think technology, right, is the way to allow marginalized communities or people from all over the world to really contribute. We recently, this is just a small scale example. I love hearing about all the jobs and everything you guys are creating at Unity, Jessica. That's really, really inspiring. We're just a small company, but we recently opened up a support center in Lebanon. Because it's horrible there right now. The financial struggles are just really bad there, and so we opened a very small support center. We have 3 women now that are basically helping to, because of technology. We have the ability to. We're all working remotely, right? Like even we might all hate it, but we have that ability, that flexibility to really open things up and to have people from other parts of the world help us. And so these women right now they're all reviewing chainsaw alerts and helping our partners to respond to those chainsaw alerts and making sure that they're able to, that they hear them and see them and that they're able to actually respond to them. So that's a big part of what we're doing recently at Rainforest Connection, is really making sure, my role is Director of Product Impact and Client Success. So really making sure that we are, is our technology actually delivering on the impact that we are committed to providing to the world and forests and ecosystems and all that. So it's kind of I see it, there's a lot of opportunities like that. It's, this is a small scale thing, but there's so many ways in which technology is going to allow more people, entry-level positions, to be able to do some really basic, really important, critical work that will allow us to be more impactful.
Yeah, and I would agree that technology has always been a great equalizer for marginalized populations, particularly for people with disabilities. I'm a person with a disability myself. I have spinal muscular atrophy and can't use anything basically from my neck down. But even with but because of technology, I am able to interact and to do different things. So hearing that how much your two organizations are utilizing technology to really support and push forward the concept of sustainability in real tangible ways opens the doors for a lot of individuals. I think about just what the COVID pandemic has done in terms of showing the world that, number one, people can work remotely, and it's through technology that we're able to do that and still be productive. So I think that sometimes things occur, and when they occur, we have to figure out how we move forward. That is a part of sustainability, and I think that has been one of the examples of what it looks like as to how can marginalized populations still be a part of the prosperity. And I'm talking about, at all levels, because so often it's easy to kind of say, okay, you can do this job over here. Well, the truth is technology has opened the door so we can do multiple jobs, and many people can. So that diversity piece is so important. Do we have any questions from the audience, Elisa? Can't hear you.
Okay. So we had one that's a specific kind of question, and I'll ask it if you can see if anyone can answer. So Suzanne D says, I read an article recently that there are too many disposed clothes that were given to charity. In the past, these would be used or the cloth was recycled. Now, because new clothes are so cheap, the world has a huge amount of non-sustainable clothes/cloth. Any info or ideas on how this can change from the panel?
Yeah, we have a great organization I'm going to put in the chat for that exact problem that we have funded around just fashion recycling challenges. Like, give me a second to dig it up, and I'll make sure that I put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Done. Good deal. Any other questions?
Actually, no. I think people have been asking questions in the chat, and you're answering the questions before we got to this Q&A, which is awesome. They'll actually turn around and say, thank you, that was great, like before you ever got to this point. So
Good deal, good deal. And I wanted to pause. I just wanted to pause to make certain we weren't missing anything that anyone wanted. But there's some other questions that I have here as well. So when we think about the technology and being connected, how connected we are to each other, we still have to address the issue of the digital divide that exists out there, because there are many rural and small communities that simply don't have access to that. How do we solve that in terms of sustainability, or what efforts have you all been involved in to kind of shore that up? Because obviously, because you're technology-based organizations, you obviously have seen this quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you, Lamondre. I'll go ahead and jump in, and then I'm going to answer another question that Rosemary's asked a couple times that we haven't answered. So I'll make sure I do that too. Yeah, I think that, for decades now, the digital divide definition continues to be expanded, right? It's not just about devices. It's not just about Wi-Fi and, the ability to get into your home. It's also about, are you as an individual surrounded by people who have the skills to use the technology to support you?
Absolutely.
You do not. Are you part of a community that could also lead you into pathways or jobs related to technology? And so, I think we've heard a lot from the new administration on how they want to be tackling the digital divide head on in this era of COVID, in particular for students who are not able to make it into school. But I just think this continues to have to be a public policy private partnership And organizations like Unity and, you know, Google and Salesforce, you know, need to continue to invest in local communities to close this divide.
Absolutely.
And then just one quick thing, there keeps being a question about accessibility. So there are very strong accessibility standards that technology companies need to adhere to. So that's sort of step one in what Unity does around accessibility, making sure that our engine, which is our editor that people use to build video games or to build virtual reality and augmented reality experiences, is aligned with those accessibility standards. And then in addition to that, we have an unbelievable amount of made with Unity experiences that support all the diversity of accessibility needs. So if there's a specific area you're interested in, please just DM me directly and I'll give you a few examples.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rosemary, for the question. Zephyr?
More to add to that.
Good deal. Good deal. So as we look at sustainability and actually being a part of our company's structures, what are some of the most important elements that are necessary for us to make sustainability a part of the DNA of our organization, as opposed to, oh yeah, that's for that environmental group over there, or we have a team that focuses on that in its siloed, or a person really is more so of a person usually, that focuses on that. But what can we do to help it become a part of the DNA of our organizations?
Zephyr, I'll follow you on this one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a much like larger thing. Like it's not like it has to be like financial incentives, and it's just my opinion, not necessarily representing Rainforest Connection here, but I just feel like companies, any organization, like they're motivated by money, right? So we have to have some sort of like pressure coming from, you know, like government or policy, whatever, to incentivize people to really want to incorporate sustainability into the DNA of the organization. I just, you know, I look at myself and I look at like the way I was raised, and, you know, I was taught from an early age, like how important sustainability is, and to do like climate, like my grandfather was an oceanographer. So he was really focused on climate action back in the 80s and 90s. And when it wasn't very popular. And, you know, so I was raised in that way. So, I mean, of course we can educate, we can let people know, we can inform, we can create awareness, all these things. But at the end of the day, I think what people respond the most to is financial incentives. And so without that, I think it's going to be very difficult to really ensure that that's integrated into the fabric of organizations. Right.
Great. Great.
Yeah, just to build on that too, I think that, you know, it's the key approach on how do we focus on inclusivity and diversity. It's the same strategy, not just about how are you recruiting and making sure that your employee base is as inclusive as possible, or your customer base, which is what we've spoken about, but how do we actually deliberately power shift to those communities with the capital, as you mentioned, the decision-making power and the decision-making ability to be able to focus on sustainability. So we look at it truly from a recruiting and a resource shifting perspective too.
Right, right.
We have another good question in here. Any comments on how COVID has helped or hindered sustainability besides reducing the air pollution from working at home?
I mean, I think for us, like, well, we've always been a fully remote organization. So we have our developers are in Asia and Europe, and you know, I'm here in San Diego. We only have a few of us in the U.S., but most of us are located, distributed, you know, throughout the world. So we've been doing this for quite some time. But I think the fact that everyone's working remotely is, you know, is definitely like a big deal. But also realizing that we can really tap into talent from in other countries that are like back to like kind of the marginalized populations aspect of this conversation. I think that has been a really big deal, and it really does level the playing field. You know, allows people like developers or individuals that are in countries like Thailand or you know, Lebanon, like in our case, to really be able to participate more. And I think that has been a big game changer with COVID. You know, because even though we've been doing this for a while, like there's a lot of other companies that maybe hadn't occurred to them, and now they are able to obviously save a lot of money by tapping into those resources.
Great answer. Jessica?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that I think on the positive side, it's been an excellent mindset and behavior shift for all of us. I think on the challenge side, it has created a significant amount of new waste that is really unclear on how we'll be grappling with that waste and what the recycling looks like. And then there is also a lot of, just challenging price wars happening right now related to plastic in general. So just a lot more complexity in the waste category.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you, I think that is I think that is one of the hallmarks of sustainability, is that it's a much more complex way of looking at things, because now you're really looking at how all things interrelate and interact, and what it means for the whole of the system. Obviously, companies have seen that in most instances, when you allow someone to work from home, especially now, they've noticed that productivity has gone up in some areas. But then the flip side of that is, so has waste in some areas as well. So it really is a complex way of looking at things, but it's absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. We got a few more minutes. Any more questions, Alicia?
No.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I want to.
Go
A
ahead.
couple of comments. No, I was going to say I was going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just wanted to make certain that we've gotten all of the questions answered. When we think about sustainability, it is important that we do remember that it is about those three pillars, that it's about the environment, that it is about society, and it is also about economics. And truthfully, if we only focus on one area or one specific part of it, we've missed the entire point. The point is that the systems that we live in, the systems that we function in, have to be renewable systems. They have to be systems that are perpetual, that can go on, because what is happening so often is we're consuming more than we're putting back into it. And so things begin to drop out. If we have an electric car, and that electric car is great, but if order to power that electric car, we're shipping coal from the other side of the world, that pretty much defeats the purpose of an electric car. So we really have to begin to think about it holistically and look at it in terms of, how do we make this so that tomorrow will take care of tomorrow and the tomorrow after that and tomorrow after that? How do we do that today? So I appreciate my panelists, Jessica and Zephyr and Alicia, for assisting us with this. And thank you so much for your comments and your questions. And we appreciate it so much. So let's go out there and continue to create the sustainable world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lamondre. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lamondre, Zephyr, and Jessica. Such a great discussion for 2020 and beyond. It's not just about us being in pandemic times. It's about us moving forward. How are we reinventing 2021? So I love that this topic is being talked about, and the holistic approach is really a great way of thinking of it, making it just a part of your life and not feeling forced. So I really appreciate this panel and listening to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
I wanted to let everyone know that we are having a holiday party later on today at 3:15. So make sure that you're there with your virtual appetizers and cocktails. We'll do a little networking. But right now we are going to head over to the Career Fair and Product Expo, and there is a networking event in the networking cafe. So I will have Peggy add the agenda info for V Summit so that everyone can just click on the link and easily get into the Career Fair and the Product Expo.